Ladies and gentlemen of the press, good morning, and thank you for accepting our invitation to this traditional press conference that begins the process of the annual meetings. And let me use this opportunity to thank Mr. Solomon Mugera, Director of Communications of the bank, for really organizing this and working very closely with the teams. And also I want to welcome my colleagues, the vice presidents who are all connected and one present in the room as we try to bring this information about the annual meetings to you. I would like to give you just a bit of a highlight of what to expect, and then following which my colleagues will chip in as will be moderated by the Director of Communications. Let me give you a background on the bank for those of you who may not know very much about the bank. As you may be aware, the African Development Bank Group is made up of three distinct entities: the African Development Bank, which we call the bank itself, the African Development Fund, the fund, and the Nigerian Trust Fund, which is referred to as the NTF. That's what makes up the bank group. The bank and the fund have separate governance organs. In other words, different boards of governors as well as different boards of directors. On the other hand, the Nigerian Trust Fund is a special trust fund that makes use of the governance organs of the bank as constituted, particularly the board of directors of the bank. As Secretary General of the bank group, I am secretary to the boards of governors of the bank and the fund, as well as to the boards of directors. The objective of this press conference is to share with you press people, some pertinent information on the 2023 annual meetings, which will mark the most important and pivotal statutory event on the governance calendar of the bank group this year. The theme of this year's annual meeting is mobilizing private sector financing for climate and green growth in Africa. Now, having set the scene with the theme, let me inform you as to the dates of the annual meeting as well as the venue. The meeting will hold from the 22nd to the 26th of May, 2023, as the 58th session of the Boards of Governors of the bank and the 49th session of the Boards of Governors of the fund, and will be held in Sharm el-Sheikh, Arab Republic of Egypt. The annual meeting are a statutory event of the bank group. During the meetings, the boards of governors, as the heads decision-making and oversight organs of the bank and the fund, will review the annual reports on the finances, operations, and other activities of the bank and fund during the preceding year. The governors will also adopt resolutions on key decisions and conclusions of the annual meetings. Further, the governors will dialogue on approaches towards addressing three strategic challenges that Africa will be confronted with in the coming year, namely the financing a low-carbon development path that delivers growth and inclusivity, as well as meets the continent's climate goals, placing climate adaptation at the heart of the economic policies, and unleashing Africa's potential to address food insecurity and to feed itself. In addition to the statutory aspects of the annual meetings that I have just highlighted, the bank will organize a series of knowledge events under the theme of the annual meetings that I have just indicated. And finally, there will be press events, the details of which will be provided by the Director of Communications of the bank group. The theme of the annual meetings, which I have mentioned to you, mobilizing private sector financing for climate and green growth in Africa, is informed by the increasing realization of the need to mobilize alternative sources of financing to address the gap in the financing necessary to tackle the impact of climate change and aid the transition to a green economy across the African continent. The knowledge events will therefore explore how the domestic and international private sector could be leveraged with a view to closing a climate financing gap of up to $127.2 billion a year until 2030, amid the unmaterialized promise by developed countries to provide 100 billion annually for climate finance. Let me provide you a highlight of the programs of the annual meetings. For now, I'd like to take you through the program of the annual meetings with a specific focus on the statutory aspects. The detailed program is available on the website of the annual meetings for you to look at. It is important to note that all statutory meetings will be closed to the public. On day one, the three of the subsidiary organs of the Board of Governors, namely the Bureau, the Joint Steering Committee, and the Steering Committee on the election of the President, will meet to discuss items on their agenda. Now, I know that whenever you mention election of the President, it does raise some bit of hairs in terms of, oh, what is there? And I know you want to ask a few questions on that as we open the floor. The formal opening will be on the second day from 10 to 11 o'clock. Also on the second day, the first sitting of the Board of Governors will be held from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. During this session, the Board of Governors will review and, as appropriate, approve recommendations from the various subsidiary organs and adopt relevant resolutions. The second sitting of the Board of Governors, which is the Governors' Dialogue, will be held on day 3 from 9 to 12:30. The third sitting of the Board of Governors will hold on day 5, and during which the official communique and the official records of the annual meetings will be adopted. And the closing session of the annual meetings will follow soon after the third sitting, where there will be the ceremonial handover to a new chairperson of the Board of Governors. Finally, there is another significant aspect of the annual meetings in this year, which I would like to highlight, namely the commemoration of Africa Day. As you may be aware, the 25th of May every year, previously referred to as African Freedom Day and African Liberation Day, is designated as Africa Day, a day on which the founding of the Organization of African Unity, which today is known as the African Union, is commemorated. This year's celebration of Africa Day is of particular significance because the African Unity umbrella turns 60. As happened during recent annual meetings, the AfDB group will this year organize the Africa Day event on May 25th in Sharm el-Sheikh from 3 o'clock to 6:15 under the theme, Africa's Youth, Africa's Development Answer. The event will afford the youth selected from the different geographical regions of Africa the opportunity to share their perspective on Africa's development in terms of what is working, what needs improvement, and how they perceive Africa's future. The event is also intended to deepen the youth's understanding and knowledge of the interconnectedness of the African Union Agenda 2063, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and the AfDB's High 5 priorities. A major highlight of the event will be a showcase of Africa through culture, through dressing, through music, and dancing. I welcome you to participate fully in this event. And of course, as we've indicated to board members as well as senior management and generality of staff, you must all that day be dressed fully in various costumes of Africa that you have. That is your ticket to entering the hall. So if you're not dressed, you'll be turned away. So try, even journalists, if you want to cover that, try to be African and try to celebrate 60 years of Africa's unity. I will now call on the Director of the Communication and External Relations Department to address you on the press events planned for the annual meetings, not immediately after I finish. He will be followed by Professor Kevin Orama, the Chief Economist and Vice President, Economic Governance and Knowledge Management, who will address you on the knowledge events of the annual meetings. And then he will also be followed by Dr. Kevin Kariki, the Vice President for Power, Energy and Climate, Green Growth, Dr. Solomon Queno, who is Vice President for Private Sector, and of course, other Vice President Kevin Kariki. I've already mentioned Kevin Kariki, Dr. Beth Dunford, also of Agriculture, Human Development, were also here, as well as RDVP President, Vice President Marilo. Following their remarks, we will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Let me use this opportunity to thank you for being here and for logging in to hear what the bank has for you or for the public or for itself for the annual meetings which will be holding in Sharm el-Sheikh. And please do get yourself ready to attend the annual meetings and to cover it very well. Egypt is waiting for you to receive you. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to address you.